Slutz's main argument in the book, Overturning Brown, is the fact that even though Brown versus Board of Education overturned segregation in public schools, that the charter school system filled this void and really prevented proper integration of schools so that children of color and white children receive the exact same education. His evidence is pretty substantial in the book. Starting on page 5, he shows this graph. You can see it, which basically shows the percentage, the overrepresentation of white students in private schools. And in every state in the country, white students are overrepresented in private schools, barring it looks like barring just Vermont and New Hampshire, and Montana are the only two, and Wisconsin, 4 states really where the white students are overrepresented in private schools, with some states, specifically the southern states in the darker colors here, being as high as 23.6% in Texas, 26.6% in Louisiana, and as high as 36.1% in Mississippi. So the overrepresentation of white students in private schools is definitely one of the telltale factual signs that racial integration has not been successful and that these private schools can be used to facilitate a new form of segregation, a virtual segregation as opposed to inherent legal segregation. He also shows that where school choice is available, and it's largely southern states, as you can see right here, the southern states that had segregation are much more likely to have school choice, especially the tax credit and voucher system, which he discusses how that disproportionately helps white students get into private schools and private education through the charter school system by basically allowing white students who have many more resources and who are generally more economically prosperous to basically have these advantages to get into good schools. So in theory, you're basing your applicants off of merit, but in reality, the white students are always going to be more successful and become higher on merit, based solely on the fact that they're more economically inclined to be prosperous and have those resources that students of color, specifically African American students, don't have. The strengths of this book are it has a lot of analytical data, like it has even more on this page, and throughout the book it kind of has analytical data that I think really helps push home his point that virtual segregation still exists, and that we have come a long way since Brown versus Board of Education, but we're definitely not where we need to be, and that white students are really overperforming. Like here he has this graph that's definitely very telling of the southern share of the nation's private school enrollment, which has increased by, compared to 1965, it's increased by 20%. So an additional 20% of schools in the nation's private school system are now in the South, the former segregation schools. I think the weaknesses of this book are probably that he doesn't really give a solution. Education is a very challenging topic, especially the implementation of non-racialized education, of educating students equally across all different races, because in theory, education filters into socioeconomic background. So I don't think he posed as many solutions as I would have liked. I would have really liked him to he focused the last little bit on the future of desegregation and basically he more focused sadly on how you have to recognize that segregation still exists, which I think is greatly important, but it's also incredibly difficult, especially as we become more economically divided based on where we live. To have this great integration that we all dream and hope of, it becomes a lot more challenging and a lot more difficult to properly implement or to enroll students where all races are completely equal. I think the book raises a lot of important issues. I think it raises the issue of the significance of Brown versus Board of Education. I think we definitely view it as a landmark legal decision, but in the field of education, I think that can be somewhat misleading, its landmark perspective, because I think definitely that, yes, yes, it helped to or it helped to influence and encourage desegregation, but I think it misses the point in that just how when you implement taxes on the rich, they always somehow seem to find a way to magically get around them. That segregationists have really used the same policies in education to still avoid many of the tasks and legislation assigned to integrate schools and make them equal. I think also this book raises the question of, what is the future of educating students of color and students in general. I think is more importantly what it really addresses, because I think it shows that there's holes in education and even problems that we thought we defeated and are from the past, like segregation, are still alive and well today, even if it's not in a written legal form, but it's in a virtual sort of hidden style.